To our afternoon session. We'll start with Jenny today, and then Emily, I think, is next, and we end with Caleb. That's right. So I've enjoyed teaching Jenny. There's not a whole lot of instruction she needs. She gets things done, and she does them well. Never have to check on her MLA. It's always perfect. Papers are really well written, so it's been fun teaching Jenny. She's got a topic that is important in today's culture, and so her title is "Mirror, Mirror on the Wall: Why Teenage Cosmetic Surgery is a Risk." She wants to say this. She wants to thank her parents for supporting her, my advisor, Ms. Maymay, for guiding me through my thesis. So give me just a second to set up the timer, and you can start when I give you the cue. You can start when ready.
A young hen nervously traces the outline of her nose in the reflection. A sigh escapes from what she perceives as imperfect, thin lips. Outside the window, the world rushes by. People bustling around with bandages, swollen faces, and rigid expressions. The seed of discontent grew, and a constant whispers of inadequacy bothers her day in and day out. But when did beauty become a burden? At what point was individuality stripped away and replaced with a homogeneous standard? This isn't a scene from a distant future, but a present-day reality for some teenagers. Cosmetic surgery, an idea so alluring yet so dangerous. However, beneath the promise of beauty lies a deeper cost, one that threatens a vulnerable generation. Where then did this obsession with beauty and perfection originate? Let us rewind to the earliest understanding of plastic surgery, when it was known simply as the surgery of the nose. In the 19th century, syphilis disease caused a collapsed nose cartilage, and those infected began seeking reconstructive procedures. Later, during the First World War, many soldiers suffered terrible facial injuries, which prompted the development for new surgical technologies. What began as a medical necessity slowly evolved into something more, not merely to restore adequate function, but also to improve appearance. Today, with the influence of celebrity culture and advancements, cosmetic surgery continues to flourish like a flower in fertile soil, attracting many people, including teenagers, to seek such procedures. As evident, cosmetic surgery procedures reached a drastic 132% from 2000s to 2016. Specifically, in teenage patients, many as young as 15 years old seek consultations for cosmetic surgery. As this trend grows, it is essential to understand the difference between cosmetic surgery and plastic surgery. Cosmetic surgery refers to various procedures designed to improve or change one's physical appearance. On the other hand, plastic surgery focuses on reconstructing facial and body defects caused by birth disorders, trauma, burns, or disease. Generally, cosmetic surgery serves as a way to improve self-esteem and personal satisfaction with one's appearance. However, this is where the problem lies. The normalization of cosmetic surgery raises the crucial question of the potential long-term effect on teenagers, affecting them mentally, physically, and emotionally. Without clear and structured guidelines, teenagers may plunge headfirst into cosmetic surgery, blinded by the ripples it may send to their bodies and mind. While the public acknowledges the problem of beauty procedures among teenagers on a surface level, many still turn a blind eye. Even so, current legislation fails to provide sufficient measures to help protect this age group. Such restrictions vary by country. For example, countries such as the Netherlands, New Zealand, and Ireland allow patients as young as 16 years old, while other countries such as Sweden, Spain, and Germany have no age restrictions for cosmetic surgery at all. In Indonesia, general health law regarding medical practice exists, Yet no specific regulation directly addresses cosmetic surgery. Questions such as who hold the authority to perform these procedures and which age groups are deemed competent to undergo cosmetic surgery still remain ambiguous. This inconsistency of standardized regulation could provide inadequate protection and result in situations where teenagers, driven by external and unrealistic standards, make life-altering decisions without the proper guidance and support. Thus, cosmetic surgery in teenagers should not be allowed for 3 reasons: the undermining of the psychological well-being for teenagers, the medicalization of normal adolescent experiences, and the lack of robustness in safeguarding system of cosmetic surgery in teenagers. As we all know, teenagers experience a sensitive period of emotional and mental development. Consequently, the desire and the act to undergo cosmetic surgery could exacerbate their mental health being. One of the key reasons derives from the puberty phase in adolescence, which involves significant brain structure development and emotional change. Subcortical brain areas, such as the limbic and reward system, which are responsible for processing social and emotional stimuli, develop first, while the prefrontal cortex, responsible for regulating rational behavior, remains relatively immature. This imbalance of maturity leads to teenagers to be more driven by external processes, leading to impulsivity and risk-taking behaviors. Thus, the decision to undergo cosmetic surgery often comes from affective reasons, such as feelings to meet social media standards, pressure from peers, and the desire for self-acceptance. It is only when the prefrontal cortex fully matures in the mid-20s that teenagers are able to make sound decisions regarding cosmetic surgery. Apart from their diminished ability to make sound decisions, the emotional susceptibility of teenagers makes them highly vulnerable to psychological problems after cosmetic surgery, which can exacerbate pre-existing mental issues. Based on a web-based survey of 173 members of Dutch cosmetic surgery professionals, approximately 2/3 of them considered body dysmorphic disorder a contraindication to cosmetic surgery. In other words, cosmetic surgery procedures are not recommended. They also point out that body dysmorphic disorder is a body image issue, and undergoing cosmetic surgery does not help, sometimes even making things worse for up to 95% of people initially diagnosed. For teenagers, this is when mental health issues often peak. Since they are still figuring out how to handle and regulate their emotions, undergoing cosmetic surgery is a risky decision, which possibly aggravates current issues, especially if they fail to process the outcomes. Since teenagers are still developing, undergoing cosmetic surgery further enhances the struggle, where they are not able to create helpful and sufficient coping mechanisms to deal with low self-esteem and self-acceptance. As alluring as cosmetic surgery may sound, this approach proves fundamentally flawed. In a questionnaire study of individuals who underwent eyelid surgery, results showed that the mean of patients' self-esteem before and after surgery remains relatively the same. This indicates that the surgeon's knives promise a solution, but delivers only temporary relief. That cosmetic surgery poses as a guarantee for external beauty, but often ignores the internal problems that lie within. Imagine, you jump to the last chapter of a book without even finishing the story. Undoubtedly, this does spoil the narrative. Similarly, making permanent changes to one's appearance during adolescence skips over the natural process for genuine growth and self-discovery. Next, the availability and promotion of cosmetic surgery for teenagers ultimately leads to the medicalization of normal adolescent experiences. In short, this means defining a non-medical problem using a medical framework, an idea that is especially common in cosmetic surgery, which often treats ugliness as a form of disease. One contributor lies in social media platforms that shift cosmetic surgery to the new normal by presenting surgically altered features as desirable. I'm sure that most of us has come across cosmetic surgery-related content while scrolling mindlessly through our phones. In fact, a study reveals that 40% of teenagers have encountered posts online that triggered concerns about their body image. Take the example of Indonesian influencer Jessica Fentiza. While her content appeals to younger generations, Gen Z and millennials specifically, she openly discussed her cosmetic procedures such as rhinoplasty and face contour surgery. Analogically, the media is like a relentless tide, gradually bombarding teenagers with unrealistic images characterized by heavy filters and edits. Due to this normalization, more teenagers are following suit. And as more teenagers opt for cosmetic surgery, normal variations in appearance then appear as issues requiring medical intervention, reinforcing the belief that cosmetic surgery provides a path towards beauty and normalcy. Cosmetic surgery positions certain body or facial proportions as more desirable, but that overlooks the diversity of natural body types. The main idea is it promotes a narrow, culturally influenced standard of beauty. One study even found that cosmetic surgeons often use terms such as without or lack of and flat or dull in pathologizing descriptions of the Asian eyes, such as in the case of Australian surgery website Plastic Surgery Sydney, which identifies 3 main quote-unquote problems with natural Asian eyelids. Once again, teenagers in particular are more vulnerable to these medicalized narratives, as they are in a fragile state of development. As a result, teenagers face a higher likelihood to pursue unnecessary cosmetic procedures, which can pose potential long-term health risks. One of the main concerns of cosmetic surgery in teenagers involves the ongoing growth of their bodies. Take rhinoplasty, the most common surgery, for example. Unlike in adults, it actually carries greater significance, as the craniofacial bone structure is still developing. On average, the nose doesn't fully mature until about 15.8 years in girls and 16.9 years in boys. What's even more concerning is that, according to Dr. Rarish, the lack of research regarding teenagers undergoing other specific procedures raises difficulty in wholly assessing the potential risks in a detailed manner. Even after considering the mental challenges and how society failed them, the truth is the government hasn't done much either. The lack of a strong and stringent safeguard system, in fact, worsens the impulsivity of teenagers in undergoing cosmetic decisions. At present, it mostly comes down to parental consent. However, the reliance on parental consent alone proves insufficient, as this approach fails to provide a strict and concrete framework in regulating cosmetic surgery decisions. Sure, most parents set boundaries, but teenagers often find a way around them. Based on a true story, Sarah, at just 16, would repeatedly beg her parents for a nose job. When her parents refused, she was able to fake her age as no one asked for proof, and use her parents' credit card details to pay for the procedures. To make matters worse, other clinics also encouraged Sarah to have lip fillers injected as well. Even with parental consent, teenagers will ultimately regret their decision later in life. Teenagers today already face immense pressure, such as stress from home, performance at school, and other emerging adult responsibilities. All these different stressors are capable to compounding to a great deal of emotional stress. But what happens when you add fuel to the fire? What happens when you start worrying about one more thing that isn't even necessary? That's when the decision for cosmetic surgery might just be another reckless move, driven by a reduced ability to make sound decisions as a result of all these stressors combined. Given all this, cosmetic surgery is undoubtedly highly prone to regret. For instance, celebrities like Bella Hadid, who had a nose job at only 14, has expressed regret over the procedure, now wishing she had embraced the nose passed down from her ancestors, as she believed that she will grow into her natural nose over time. As the saying goes, look before you leap, or in other words, make careful decisions instead of acting on impulse. Often, what comes after regret is more cosmetic surgery. As such, seemingly minor cosmetic procedures may escalate into overuse or addiction. This phenomenon is called the snowball effect. Seemingly minor procedures such as eyelid surgery, Botox, and lip fillers fuel the desire for additional surgery, creating a potentially addictive pattern. Sometimes, it even reaches to a point where no amount of surgery proves satisfactory because of their continual obsession over perceived imperfections. Similar to cosmetic surgery, drinking also carries risks of being prone to addiction. But here's the key difference. Cosmetic surgery receives far less recognition for its potential long-term consequences. And that brings us back to the heart of the issue. Establishing stricter regulation is necessary. It is a step towards genuinely protecting the well-being of teenagers. Now, some might argue, isn't cosmetic surgery a matter of personal choice? Teenagers should have the autonomy to make decisions about their bodies, or as they put it, my body, my choice. While personal autonomy still remains a key principle of medical ethics, teenagers still lack the competence to decide on some issues, especially on a decision as consequential as cosmetic surgery. Think about it. Parents still set rules for the simplest of things. To name a few, phone usage or curfew. If teenagers still need guidance in this area, how could they possibly be ready, much less qualified, to make a decision as serious and as permanent as cosmetic surgery? Boundaries exist for a reason. Discouraging teenage cosmetic surgery does not inhibit their personal autonomy, but guides them to make informed and reflective decisions. Other people might argue that going for cosmetic surgery could provide teenagers with an advantage, especially in a society where looks are highly valued. While looks do hold influence, placing too much emphasis on appearance creates immense and unhealthy societal pressure on teenagers. The truth is, career and long-term success isn't just about looks. It is also closely linked to a combination of skills and talents, as well as cognitive and non-cognitive abilities. Even if looks could lead one faster to one's goals, does that mean cosmetic surgery is the answer? Encouraging cosmetic surgery for teenagers still remains unjustified, as they will adopt the idea that looks equals success. Instead, teenagers should focus on what really lasts: skills, confidence, and character. That's what sets the foundation for real, lasting success. In conclusion, cosmetic surgery in teenagers is a growing concern that shouldn't be ignored. With the emotional and mental development still ongoing, the medicalization of normal adolescent experiences, and the lack of a stringent safeguard system, teenagers simply aren't the right candidates for cosmetic surgery. More specifically, their developing brain and the external pressures makes them more likely to get caught up in the idea of cosmetic surgery, which in turn makes them more vulnerable. Ultimately, the mental and physical implications far outweighs any perceived benefits. If we continue down this path, a path where cosmetic surgery becomes a norm, we risk raising a generation that perceives value with external appearance, leading to a forever chase for unattainable standards. On the other hand, if intervention happens where self-esteem is emphasized over appearance, teenagers will perceive their worth beyond their reflections in the mirror. Hence, what does this mean for us? As teenagers, it is crucial to be aware of the far-reaching complications of cosmetic surgery, as this allows more resistance towards unnecessary altercations pushed by the media. As parents and educators, promoting body positivity and media literacy helps teenagers navigate unrealistic standards. And lastly, as a society, we must shift the conversation from the normalization of cosmetic surgery and altering appearances to embracing authenticity and natural beauty. Here's the big question. Do we let teenagers fall victim to an industry profiting off their insecurities? Or do we take stand for their well-being? Thank you.
Really good job, Jenny. Our panelists today are Ms. Beatrix and Mr. Felix. We'll let Ms. Beatrix go first.
Okay, good afternoon, Jenny. Well done. Okay, yeah. So as a teenager, I'm happy that you brought this topic up. I'm start with a questions. So you talk about the cosmetic surgery in teenagers, right? Now, rather than we focus on banning the cosmetic surgery in teenagers, why don't we focus on improving the teenager awareness about their self-esteem, let's say, or the self-confidence? Since, let's saying like this, if we focus on banning the cosmetic surgery, then the people will find another way to improve their appearance. Now, my question is, why should we focus on only banning this, not focus on really improving the teenager awareness about their self-confidence?
I believe that, thank you for the question, Ms. Beatrix. I believe that banning cosmetic surgery also comes with other factors, such as educating them as well, so that teenagers won't be too likely to get caught up with the idea of cosmetic surgery. And because of that, of course, the demand for cosmetic surgery will decrease as well.
Okay, thank you. Then next, I'm talking about the risks and complications of cosmetic surgery. You mentioned that also on your thesis. In my opinions, if we compare the teenager health performance than adult, then we can say that having cosmetic surgery at teenagers will have minimized risk and complications effect than adult. How will you respond to this? Or maybe if people have a cosmetic surgery during their teenage age, then they will have a shorter recovery time than adult.
So based on my research, I believe that teenagers are still in the process of growing, so their bodies are still growing, and I believe that that's what makes them more vulnerable to cosmetic surgery, and not only the physical risk, but also the mental risk that comes along with cosmetic surgery.
Okay, yeah, so the worst is the psychological effect, yeah, than the physical effect. Okay, wait. Okay, how if, let's say, people think that by having a cosmetic surgery, it will minimize the bullying case or suicide case in the teenagers? How will you respond to this?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Beatrix. So for bullying cases, I believe that there are other alternatives that they could go to. For example, like therapy. Because if a teenager undergoes cosmetic surgery, that it only changes their external appearances, and often it doesn't touch the internal problems, such as their low self-esteem, which I believe it will be more efficient if a teenagers undergo therapy. So, for example, if they have an insecurity that that they want to change, and they did undergo cosmetic surgery, often in the future, they could also get another insecurity that could make them want cosmetic surgery again. So it's kind of like a cycle as well.
Okay, maybe this is the last. I'm just wondering if, let's say, the cosmetic surgery is utilized by criminals to hide their identity, then I think that the best times to do the cosmetic surgery is teenagers, or teenager is the best people should that should allow to do the cosmetic surgery, since we know that teenagers maybe have a minimum criminal record? How will you respond to this?
So I believe that by strictly prohibiting cosmetic surgery for teenagers will not result in those kind of situations. So yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, yeah, that's a very rare case. Yep, I think that's enough from me. Thank you, Jennifer. Well done.
All right, Mr. Felix.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
Well done. What I really like about your thesis is how you really try to include lots of numerical data to support your claims. That's really good, and that's really much appreciated. So my first question is, it's about the issue of the teenage cosmetic surgery itself. So how global do you think this problem is?
So right now, I feel like cosmetic surgery in teenagers is increasingly normalized because there are also more media coverage on these issues on teenage cosmetic surgery, and there are also data showing that more teenagers are seeking for cosmetic surgeries. So I believe it is becoming more globalized.
Okay, so I'm assuming that this is affecting more girls than boys, right?
Yeah.
Usually, okay. So how about in countries where girls are women are regulated to cover their faces with veils? Well, do you think it has the same impact there as in countries that do not have this regulation? What do you think?
Thank you, Mr. Felix, for the question. So I believe that if in countries that where they need to cover their faces, I think this issue is also relevant in, but not as much as in other countries where they are able to freely show their face, because everyone sees their face in their mirror every day. So I feel like they have self-esteem, either high or low, which also impacts if they want to undergo cosmetic surgery to improve their appearances.
Okay, so when you said in your thesis that cosmetic surgery shouldn't be allowed in teenagers, you're talking about by law, right? So should that law be different by country, or should it be like a universal regulation? What do you think?
I think it should be a universal regulation, because then it will be standardized and all countries will have the same regulations, so that teenagers will be more regulated. Yes.
Okay, so like if we think about different countries, right? So where each country has their own drinking age, voting age, driving age, right? So how is that different in this case? Why should we apply it universally rather than by country then? Because if each country has their own drinking, voting, and driving age, why not make it the same way? What do you think?
So about drinking and driving and all those other cases, I also believe that it should be universal for each countries, because then again it will be more standardized, and that teenagers will be more regulated in a sense, their actions.
Okay, thank you for taking a stance there. Well done. So, what do you think about parents' role in all of this? Do you think that if we're saying that, okay, this is by law not allowed in teenagers, are we taking the autonomy of the parents over their children's bodies? What do you think?
Could you rephrase the question?
So, you're saying in your thesis that parents are sometimes inadequate, or they're not making good decisions for their children, but don't you think it's more of a family value thing rather than it should be regulated by the countries? What do you think?
So to clarify, is it about personal autonomy?
So parents making decisions for their children, it's more
Oh, right.
on the parents' roles.
Oh, so well, yes, parents have to look over their child and sometimes make decisions for their child themselves. However, this issue is not only solely based on the parents themselves, because it also affects the teenagers, which overall is what makes up a society. So I feel like with regulating each individual by the government, then of course I feel like then society will flourish in a sense.
Okay. Something else that I think you should explore. I don't know if you did, maybe, but have you seen any economic impact on, so how teenage cosmetic surgery is having economic impact on like GDP or things like that? Have you explored this area yet?
So I believe that one of the main countries where cosmetic surgery is such a big thing is in South Korea, and with more people from other countries traveling to South Korea to get their cosmetic surgery, of course their economy will increase. However, I feel that in South Korea, their economy isn't solely based on cosmetic surgery, and because it also covers other beauty sectors such as their makeup or skin facials, stuff like that.
Do you think it hurts the economy though, if we take this away from them?
In a sense, theoretically, yes, because there are less patients, right? However, what I'm emphasizing is that teenagers should not be allowed to undergo cosmetic surgery. However, of course, adults they still have the they still could undergo cosmetic surgery. So probably not that much.
Okay. What if, so here's a case for you, right? What if there's a teenager, a girl, she got in an accident, so her face and body is covered in burns, but then she can live with it. It's not dysfunctional. You mentioned in your thesis that, it's okay if it's causing dysfunction to certain organs of the face, right? Or of the body. So it's not dysfunctional, it's just burned, right? So it leaves a mark. And then this teenager feels very insecure about it. So would you consider that plastic or cosmetic surgery? And is that okay? What do you think?
So it's not dysfunctional.
It's not, it's just leaving marks, burn marks.
So in that case, I feel like if a person have burns, then it is not something normal. And of course, it is up to the teenager themselves whether they want to undergo plastic surgery to reconstruct their face. And if they're insecure about it, well, I feel like in this case it is okay because it is caused by an accident.
So what should the law state, if you were a lawmaker, right? What should the law statement be? Like, where is the boundary of what's okay and what's not? Then, like, what would you say is the law statement for this? What do you think?
So I would say that the boundaries should be for reconstructive purposes, then cosmetic surgery should be allowed since it can restore function and function.
Okay, I think that's it for me. Thank you, Jenny. Well done.
Okay, I just have a few questions, some from your peers. So just, maybe you said this and I just missed it, but can a teenager today walk into a plastic surgery, a place that does plastic surgery like the one I see on Surya Samantri every day, and go without their parents and make an appointment to do cosmetic surgery? Or is there a law against that?
Are you talking about Indonesia? So I feel like in Indonesia, there isn't any regulations that specifically states about cosmetic surgery. However, I feel like people will still have like the the sense that this is a teenager, that she or he shouldn't go undergo plastic surgery. So, yeah.
Okay. And I want to extend something that Mr. Felix was working on. So let's say that it's not a burn victim. Maybe it's not something that happened, but maybe a girl is born with a nose that it's not like she just wants to look a little better, but she really has what appears to be an abnormal nose that people notice, they look at it, they make expressions at. Is there ever a case, even though it would be totally cosmetic, where it would be appropriate because of somebody's, abnormal facial features, right?
So in that case, I believe plastic surgery would be allowed because it fixes something abnormal, which is something not normal. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the kind of the gray area. So where, if you call one thing that looks really abnormal, it seems like over time there's kind of this slippery slope where doctors will say, yeah, that's abnormal enough, so we'll go ahead and call that plastic surgery. How do you decide where the boundary is between what's so abnormal that we do a surgery on and what's just not too abnormal? How do you decide?
So as I mentioned before, the main idea is that if it's for reconstructive purposes, then it is allowed. But for some cases where it's abnormal, then I guess it's allowed. But of course, the doctors should also be equipped with the responsibility for their patients. So they shouldn't just randomly say, "Oh, this is abnormal," or "You can get plastic surgery because this is abnormal." Well, doctors, they have the moral obligation to actually say what is right. Yeah.
Okay. And what about, it seems to me that a lot of what you said kind of applies to adults too. What do you think about cosmetic surgery in general, whether it's teenagers or adults? Because it seems like adults can get addicted to the same kind of thing.
So in general, I don't think cosmetic surgery should be encouraged for anyone, because that reinforces the harmful belief that if I change this appearance, then I will be more worthy of who I am. And for adults as well, I believe they could also be more like they could also get caught up with the idea of cosmetic surgery, but because they have the decision capability and the brain development is already mature, then it is also still up to them. However, in general, they shouldn't be encouraged.
Okay, that's a good answer. So what about, some were asking, what about teenagers getting tattoos? I know it's not quite the same, but it kind of is in a way. They're marking themselves up kind of permanently. What do you think about that? Does that fall under the same arguments or not?
So for tattoos, I believe that they also shouldn't be encouraged because, as I mentioned before, it could also be an impulsive decision. But however, tattoos is something that could be, removed or through laser technologies. So it is not as permanent as cosmetic surgery. Yeah.
Okay, good. And I think we have just one last question, and my question would be, if should we hold doctors or surgeons accountable if they perform plastic or cosmetic surgeries on teenagers? Should we hold them accountable if they break the law, or even if they just? Like you said, we should trust surgeons and doctors to make good decisions. Should we hold them accountable for performing a cosmetic surgery on someone who's below a certain age?
I believe so because doctors, as I've mentioned before, they should think whether cosmetic surgery is actually the right choice, and they have the obligation to actually stand for the truth of whether cosmetic surgery is right or not. And if they do perform cosmetic surgery on teenagers, then I believe the laws should also state what could happen to the doctors themselves.
Okay, very good. Time is over. You did a great job, Jenny. All right, so what we'll do is we'll meet with parents and family and panelists and advisor over here for photos. And then at 1:05, we will begin with...
Good job. Well done.